Exposed. The incredible truth behind my wedding when 12 family members chose to stay away. Sarah's phone buzzed on her desk as she prepped for her afternoon class, but the screen lit up with a text that felt like a punch to her gut. "We can't support this marriage, Sarah. Your father's not coming." Her whole vision of a fairy tale wedding crumbled at the words. The weight of those 12 family members, including her own father, boycotting her vows burned. "Can't support this," the message echoed in her mind. Was her love for Jake, a thriving entrepreneur, really that insufferable to them? She had spent years clawing her way to a strong position at the local university, proving herself in a world that often overlooked her modest beginnings. Yet here she stood, at the edge of her own happiness, feeling like a disappointment, and her heart. Friction churned a conflict between gratitude for her accomplishments and the accusations of being a sellout. Anger ignited within her. Who were they to define her future based on class? And yet, a sickening helplessness tightened around her throat as she pictured her father's disappointed face, distorted by decades of resentment towards wealth. She knew she would have to confront the darkness lurking in the family shadows. But for now, preparing for the wedding felt like planning a funeral. Days passed with her racing thoughts spiraling deeper in a frightening dance between love and loyalty. Each time she glanced at her engagement ring, the shiny symbol of commitment felt tainted. How could she wear it while knowing Jake's prosperity had become the crux of her family's contempt? She needed to know why this divide spanned wider than any family feud she had ever witnessed. The pressure swelled in her chest as she decided to open the lines of communication to her family before the big day. But each call unveiled deeper wounds, exposing layers of resentment. "Your perfect life, don't forget. We sacrificed so much for you," her aunt's voice grated on the line. "I can't believe you're marrying someone who doesn't even know what it means to struggle." Each story shared felt like daggers being thrust into Sarah's heart. Painful sacrifices flooded her thoughts, the years of sleepless nights spent studying while others went out, every moment where she had to prove her resilience wielded against the backdrop of her family's shame. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Days dwindled down. Panic corroded her resolve as it dawned on Sarah. She was on the cusp of losing not just her family's acceptance, but her own sense of self. In her final conversation with her father, a revelation slipped out years ago. They too had a chance with a business venture that could have put them on solid ground. The truth bubbled to the surface and froze her blood. Her family's grievances intertwined with the consequences of a decision long forgotten. The chapel's bright decorations suddenly felt like a mirage, each flower wilting under the pressure packed into her chest. Standing in front of those polished doors moments before the ceremony, a decision screamed for resolution. Should she expose the festering wound of their past, or let Jake, the embodiment of her ambitions, slip away into the sea of blame? Torn between the comforting embrace of familial love and the intoxicating thrill of independence, Sarah felt the enormous burden bearing down. As the music began to play, everything she once understood about loyalty versus love twisted into an unbearable riddle. Would she find the courage to stand up for her dreams, or would she allow the tides of her lineage to drown her? Each breath echoed with uncertainty, leaving Sarah on the precipice of transformation. The gentle swell of strings filled the chapel, yet it felt like a siren wailing in Sarah's ears. She stood frozen, the warm glow of the ornate candles illuminating a dawning resolve. The familiar waves of familial obligation clashed with an instinctual yearning for autonomy, leaving her at an impasse. In that breathless moment, she understood. This was not merely about a wedding, it was a battle for her identity. As she gazed down the aisle, Jake stood, radiant and hopeful, signaling a future filled with promise. But a void opened up in Sarah's stomach. What future could she truly have with him if she permitted her family's doubts to overshadow their love? Her legs felt heavy, weighed down by generations of expectation. Was she to become a mere reflection of their grievances, forever shackled to the very past she yearned to distance herself from? Suddenly, she envisioned her father's face, but instead of disappointment, she chose to conjure a memory of pride. The countless weekends spent at his side, working under the sun, the lessons about resilience woven with laughter they had forged her. She had fought to claim her place in the world, and while she had outgrown the burdens of their circumstances, she could still honor them without being bound to their fears. With a clenched jaw and racing heart, Sarah took a deep breath, releasing the feelings of shame that had entangled her. She turned and made her way down the aisle, each step echoing her choice. The whispers of doubt danced away as she focused on the warmth of Jake's smile. The world outside these walls had no domain over the love they had built. Jake's eyes shimmered with confusion and concern as she approached, yet there was an understanding there too, a silent agreement they would face all challenges together. "Are you okay?" he mouthed, concern barely masked by the joy of the moment. In reply, Sarah nodded firmly, a burgeoning strength emerging within her. As she took her place beside him, a powerful awareness surged through her veins. This was her life, her decision. Thoughts of unfinished familial conflicts lingered, but they began to feel less like chains and more like roads with untraveled paths. After the ceremony, she would confront her family, a conversation waiting to unspool the tangled threads of resentment and opportunity. The officiant began, and Sarah centered her thoughts, reinforcing her commitment not just to Jake, but to her own journey of self-definition. She realized that she could invite her family's acceptance, but she could no longer seek it as validation. Their love could be a part of her life, but it would not construct her destiny. As vows exchanged and laughter danced amidst the applause, a sense of clarity enveloped her. The tension wasn't fully alleviated, but transformed into a construct she could manage. In those beautiful moments, she didn't fully grasp the enormity of the decisions looming. What she didn't realize was that going outward to reclaim her family's history would require an even deeper confrontation of self, and it was this personal truth that would inevitably lead to her ultimate growth. Just as the ceremony culminated in shared joy, she felt a pang of apprehension for what lay ahead. The support she cherished might remain tenuous at best, and the shadows of resentment hung nearby, waiting for their turn. But Sarah now felt equipped with the courage to unravel this narrative. With the evening's festivities blooming like the flowers around her, Sarah's heart was heavy with determination to navigate the morass of her heritage and discover a way forward that melded love, ambition, and acceptance. The real journey had just begun, one that would force her to wrestle with her lineage until newfound truths emerged from the depths. And just as the laughter reached a peak, her phone buzzed again. A message appeared. "We need to talk. Now." An unsettling whisper of anxiety tapped at the edges of her confidence, and she knew it was time to face what had lingered unseen. Would she have the strength to confront her family's history and secure her future, or would that same past thrust her into the shadows once more? The moment of truth beckoned. The laughter echoed in Sarah's ears, but it was the persistent buzz of her phone that tethered her to reality. She stole a quick glance at Jake, whose eyes sparkled with uncontained joy. Her heart swelled momentarily, torn between a desire to absorb the festivities surrounding her and the pressing urgency of the message. "We need to talk. Now." The words felt like a weight in her hand, a reminder that the calm surface could crack with a single conversation. Just as she took a deep breath to steady herself, the chorus of voices began to fade, and a sense of dread crept in. As the night wore on, and guests began to mingle around her, Sarah's quiet resolve began to solidify into something firmer. She couldn't just sweep her family's lingering issues under the rug. That was something her parents had done, always opting for the illusion of unity rather than confronting their differences. When the people she loved the most chose silence over dialogue, resentment brewed like a storm cloud, pushing her to the brink of decisions she had long avoided. With Jake beside her, she sensed a support she had never felt before. His presence was a beacon, illuminating the path toward the conversations she needed to have. After they'd shared their initial vows and commitments, he wouldn't tether her to the past. Instead, he offered her the space to embrace the tumult within and emerge stronger. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Jake asked quietly as they stepped into a quieter corner of the venue. His concern wrapped around her like a protective cloak. The warmth and love were palpable, yet beneath it lurked her anxiety about the impending family confrontation. "I have to face it, Jake," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt inside. "This isn't just about us. It's about my whole life. I can't build a future without addressing the past." In his gaze, she saw understanding mixed with a tinge of worry. What had initially felt like chains was transforming into a resolve that demanded to be voiced. The crowd swayed around them, yet Sarah felt a growing determination pulse through her veins. Memories of her family filled with laughter, but also fraught with tension filled her mind. Each face, each unspoken word, pushed her to confront what had been neglected for far too long. With every step toward her family's corner of the venue, she felt a mixture of dread and liberation. She had trodden this path before, years ago during holiday dinners where misunderstandings transformed into silent meals. This time would be different. Sarah's heart and voice were aligned, ready to break the silence. In a hush that echoed her uncertainty, Sarah approached her family, finding faces both familiar and unfamiliar, a mosaic of hope and doubt. The tension was palpable as she cleared her throat, and the festivities seemed to dim in contrast to the decision she was about to assert.
"Can we talk?"
"I need to clear some things up," she started, her voice unwavering despite the rise of anxiety in her chest. The eyes that turned toward her were a reflection of her previous fears, but now they felt like a challenge to overcome. Silence wove between them, thick with unspoken grievances, yet Sarah felt her resolve firm with each passing second. She was ready to confront the roots of her heritage that had seemed to dictate her every move. With this willingness came the weight of discovering truths about herself and her family's story that she had long feared to confront. Would her family embrace this open dialogue, or would the fractures deepen further? As she prepared to dive into the murky waters of her past, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the true battle lay not just in the revelations that might explode from this moment, but in her ability to reclaim her narrative, forging a new story from the pieces of the old. All she could ask herself in that pivotal moment was, did she have the strength to navigate this confrontation and emerge whole? Or would it unravel everything she had fought for? The tension coiled tighter as she stepped closer, ready to uncover what lay beneath the surface. The silence that surrounded Sarah felt like a living thing, pulsating with uncertainty and dread. As she stood before her family, each gaze felt like a question mark probing her resolve. The room, filled just moments ago with laughter, now resembled an echo chamber of judgment, amplifying her internal struggle. "Is everyone all right?" Her mother's voice, flat and guarded, sliced through the heaviness in the air. It served as a reminder of the veneer that had cloaked their family's deep-rooted issues for far too long. Sarah felt the spark of anger ignite within her at the dismissive tone. This was at the moment she could no longer ignore the truths that bound them together, yet also kept them apart. "I'm not," she said, her heart racing. "I haven't been for a long time." Her voice once again echoed in the silence, but this time it was an invocation of honesty. "We need to address the way we've been communicating or not communicating." Her siblings shifted uncomfortably. Each look exchanged among them felt like a brief flicker of the past, the family gatherings filled with laughter that masked the deeper disconnect they all shared. Tensions sparked in the air, not just around her but among them as they acknowledged this was a black hole they could no longer avoid. Her brother, Mark, furrowed his brows and crossed his arms defensively, as if ready to shield himself from an unseen attack. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" His tone carried disbelief, as if her questioning the family's dynamic was a betrayal. "It's exactly that," she pressed, her confidence unwavering. "We've neglected the elephant in the room for years. You all act like everything is fine, but we're a family stitched together by silence and assumption. It's time we actually speak about what's bothering us." The words surged from her, as if they had been waiting in the wings, bottled up under years of unexpressed grievances. The urge to pull back and retreat into safer territory was strong, but she was resolute. Each syllable she spoke felt like an unraveling of the chains of her upbringing, her lineage that had taught her to keep her emotions tightly locked away. "Sarah," her mother interjected, a touch of desperation creeping into her voice. "We don't need to dig up the past. Can't we just move forward? You're married now. We should be celebrating that. That's exactly it." "I can't build a life based on unresolved issues," she replied, a flare of desperation mingling with determination. She looked into each face, the reflections of her past and uncertain futures weighing heavily upon her. "If we don't address the wounds of our past, how can we expect to support each other moving forward?" Mark scoffed, breaking the silence. "And what do you think we'll accomplish by pointing fingers? It's never been that simple." Sarah felt the familiar pang of doubt, but she refused to let it shut her down. "It's not about pointing fingers, Mark. It's about being honest with one another. We owe it to each other, to ourselves, to confront what's been buried and festering." Each word steeled her resolve. She was not just fighting for her voice, but for all those unspoken, hidden parts of their family history. As the tension thickened, she caught the eyes of her sister, Emily, who remained silent but wide-eyed. In that moment, Sarah saw the flicker of a kindred spirit struggling beneath the surface. It was a tiny spark of hope, igniting courage not just within herself, but perhaps within the family as well. "Are we finally going to address the fact that we let misunderstandings fester until they've grown into walls between us?" Sarah pressed on, her heart racing with possibilities. "Will we finally lift the veil on how we truly feel?" As she neared the cusp of an emotional revelation, a sudden realization struck her. This wasn't just about venting feelings. It was a pivotal chance to emerge as the architect of her familial legacy. In that moment, she understood deep within, confronting discomfort could lead to a cathartic renewal rather than a fracture. Just as she felt she had gained the upper hand, Jake's hand slipped into hers. A grounding presence, a reminder that she was not alone in this. He silently conveyed that this moment was not just for her. This was a family imperative. In that charged atmosphere, Sarah took a deep breath, grasping for deeper truths within this confrontation. "If we can't talk about what truly matters, how can we even begin to heal?" she asked, the tremor in her voice betraying her anxiety. A sudden thought invaded her mind. Could this confrontation reshape not only her relationship with her family, but also her own self-perception? Had the foundation they built for years just been the beginning of dismantling, or could it be a transformative awakening? However, as she stared into their expressions, a question began to form within her. Was the risk of exposing the family skeletons worth the chance at rebuilding their unity? Even as she pressed forward, determination flaring bright against doubt, she realized that the path ahead remained uncertain. The dread mingled with the hope that emerged from this raw confrontation. But those feelings swirled together into an essential catalytic moment, one that could either strengthen their bonds or unravel the very fabric of who they were. The air crackled with expectation as Sarah stepped further into the unknown, ready for whatever revelations awaited her and those who had chosen silence for far too long. As Sarah held her breath, awaiting her family's response, the room transformed into an uncharted territory. She could almost feel the tension coiling around them, a tangible force that threatened to engulf her. Each family member's expression was a reflection of their internal battles: fear, confusion, resentment, and perhaps the most daunting of all, the prospect of change. Mark's face tightened as he took a step closer. "You really think we can just air our dirty laundry and everything will be fine?" he challenged. His eyes flashed with indignation, yet behind the bravado, Sarah detected an undercurrent of vulnerability. It struck her that perhaps he, too, was weighed down by the same unacknowledged truths. "We don't have to do it all at once," she countered, her pulse quickening but her voice steady. "But if we don't start now, when?" we're only going to grow further apart. Her assertion was bold, fanning the embers of her anger into a warm flame of purpose. Emily, who had been quietly observing, broke her silence. What if you're right, Sarah? Her voice was soft but had an edge of something powerful courage. What if we've been pretending for too long? Sarah's heart soared slightly at the support, but doubt crept in again. What if this awakening was too much too soon? What if all of this effort ended in more darkness than light? We've been carrying our baggage for years. Maybe it's time we started unpacking it together, she said, striving to channel the nervous energy coursing through her. With each word, Sarah felt her resolve strengthen. It was becoming clearer that this confrontation wasn't just about the family, it was about the woman she was ready to become. Mark shot a glance at their mother, who had retreated into silence, her expression a blend of concern and a hint of guilt. Mom, what do you think? Sarah asked, addressing the heart of the matter. The silence that followed stretched like a taut wire. I just don't want to see this family hurt more than it already has been, her mother whispered, as if confessing a painful truth. Carrying the unspoken hurts us too, Mom, Sarah replied, her voice softening. It's time for all of us to confront what we've buried. I can't move forward into my new life without knowing where we come from, without understanding our line of scars. Seeing her mother's eyes shimmer with unshed tears was a revelation to Sarah, illuminating just how bonded they all were in their silences. She realized that this was not merely her struggle but a shared burden, an opportunity for healing that could transform not only her life, but theirs as well. I remember the arguments, the secrets, Emily interjected. Maybe confronting them is going to be painful, but isn't staying silent just as painful? As the reality of their situation washed over them, the atmosphere shifted subtly, a gust of hope breaking the otherwise stagnant air. Each family member wore expressions of contemplation now, as if awakening from a long slumber. Mark, still apprehensive, folded his arms, but the fierce look in his eyes softened. I can't promise I'll like it, but I guess we might as well try, he conceded, a burgeoning sense of responsibility creeping into his tone. Jake's grip on Sarah's hand tightened, a reminder of the stability he provided even amid the chaos. She took heart in their unity, the knowledge that she was not alone on this journey. There was a palpable crackle of energy in the room, the weight of unspoken words heavy on the air. Sarah felt her opportunity slip away if she didn't seize it now. I need to know what's been holding us back. I want to know you, all of you, beyond the walls we've built. Her family exchanged glances, a web of relationships woven together by both love and pain, but they were still tethered in confusion. Sophie needed to push further, but as she looked around, she sensed the delicate balance of emotions rising. Can we commit to just one thing today? She proposed. Let us each share one memory that we feel shapes our family's past. The ripples of her idea began to take form as her family's hesitations lingered in the balance. Would they dare to traverse the painful memories to build a path toward healing? Or would the weight of their collective silence hold them back? As they began to nod, uncertainty lingered like a lingering fog. The air thickened once again, anticipation crackling under the surface. Sarah's heart raced. This was only the beginning. What awaited her in the unveiling of their shared traumas? Would the strength of shared vulnerability transform them, or would it drive them further apart? In that moment, Sarah understood the stakes were high, and yet they were on the precipice of something monumental, a family reckoning. Her next choice would take them either toward understanding or back to the familiar prison of silence. The moments stretched as she braced herself. Could they rewrite their narrative together, or would she be scrambling to keep them from unraveling completely? The answer hung, tantalizingly close yet agonizingly out of reach, as she prepared to guide her family through the revelations that lay ahead. The silence hung in the air, pregnant with uncertainty. Sarah's heart pounded against her ribcage, an internal drumbeat echoing the tumultuous emotions around her. She could feel her family's trepidation, a restraint that mirrored her own. What if the memories unearthed were too painful to bear? Each face reflected uncertainty, but gradually, The shimmer of courage began to replace some of that hesitation. "Fine," Mark finally said, breaking the stillness. "I guess I can go first. But you all better brace yourselves." The sarcasm in his tone, while defensive, also hinted at his willingness to be vulnerable. This loosened the knot in Sarah's chest, lighting a spark of optimism. "Remember that summer when Dad left?" Mark began, his voice tentative. "I was angry, so angry. I kept thinking that if I yelled loud enough, it would bring him back, that it would somehow fix things." His admission hung in the air, as raw as it was powerful. Her family instinctively leaned closer, attention rapt. "I remember Matt saying it was all my fault, that I scared him away. Sometimes I still feel like that kid, like I'm not enough," he continued, his voice faltering, giving way to emotion. Sarah could see the vulnerability in his eyes, layers of hurt and anger clamoring to break free. In sharing, he was not only exposing his pain but laying the groundwork for healing, for forgiveness. Instead of recoiling, Emily reached for Mark's hand, a gesture of solidarity. Encouraged, Sarah stepped in. "You were just a kid, Mark. None of this was your fault. Dad made his choices." Her confidence swelled as she realized that empathy, rather than anger, could guide the conversation forward. It created space for Emily to speak. "I have always felt invisible, you know? After Dad left, I figured if I was quiet enough, I wouldn't be a burden. But that only made me feel more alone," she shared, her gaze dropping as if she could flee from the truth. "It's the silence that keeps us prisoners, dragging around those chains," Sarah reiterated, igniting the embers of her conviction. She leaned into each confession, each moment an essential stepping stone toward understanding. They were all tethered by shared longing for connection, for belonging. Their mother finally allowed a tear to escape, betraying the facade she had maintained for so long. "I was terrified to tell you how much I was hurting too." Her voice was small yet strong, rising to meet the moment. "I thought shielding you would protect you. But all I've done is keep us separated." The weight of her admission hovered like a fog, revealing the core of their family dynamic. Each had retreated into their corners, believing they could avoid additional pain. Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her, the narrative no longer burgeoning with secrets. This story was theirs to unfold together. "Can we continue?" "I don't want us to stop now," she urged, driven by instinct. Mark nodded, renewed determination sparking in his features. "I have one more thing to share," he stated, invigorated by the depth of their exchange. "I've been carrying more than anger. I've been scared of losing all of you, too. That fear is what keeps me from fully being present." With each revelation, Sarah realized that her family's past was a collection of burdens disguised as secrets. Each spoke not just of what they had suffered but what they dreamed could be different. As they delved deeper, she felt the wrapping of shame loosening around them all. She understood now that they could not merely walk away from their truths. They were shaping their identity as a family through this confrontation. In those moments, connections deepened. Yet as the last echoes of shared vulnerabilities faded into the air, a nagging thought pricked at her mind. What would happen once all of this was out in the open? Could they handle the weight of honesty? Would anger seep into their newly formed alliance? Or would they emerge invigorated, fortified against the tide of despair? The room pulsed with unresolved questions, an undercurrent of tension lingering like an unresolved note. In music, they were on the brink of transformation, but it required courage to face the music fully. Sarah closed her eyes for a second, inhaling deeply. "Are we ready for the next step?" She posed, voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. The air crackled with anticipation, her family at an impasse, holding their collective breath. Was the initial discomfort of honesty worth the possible fallout? A collective silence deepened, charged with the promise of change flavored with the risk of upheaval. All of them knew intuitively that it was no longer a question of whether to proceed. It was about whether they could withstand what was about to come to light. The effort to embrace the truth would either bind them closer or unravel everything, and as they stood on the precipice of revelation, Sarah knew she had just ignited a match in a powder keg. Would the flames of their revelations illuminate a path to healing, or would they darken their world even further? The looming realization that the most painful memories were still ahead pinned her in place, a heavy heartbeat in the echoing silence. The room remained filled with a taut silence that seemed to thrum under the weight of unspoken thoughts. Sarah could feel her pulse in her ears, a fierce reminder of her vulnerability, yet also a call to action. She had ignited a conversation with the potential to unravel or heal. The outcome hung precariously before her. "Okay, let's do this," she said, emboldened. Her voice barely masked the tremor that coursed through her, betraying the uncertainty she felt. "If we've started sharing, then I think we all know there's more to say. More to confront." Mark wiped his eyes, a mix of relief and apprehension washing over his face. "What if we end up regretting this?" he asked softly. It was a question weighted with dread. "Regret is a part of healing," their mother replied, surprising them all. "We've regretted not speaking for years. If we don't face it now, it will fester." Her voice carried a newfound firmness, illuminating her own courage. Sarah admired her mother's resolve, which ignited something inside her. She realized that this moment was not merely about laying bare old wounds but unearthing buried truths and finding strength within vulnerability. With newfound determination surging through her, Sarah faced Emily. "What about you? There's a lot of silence in your eyes. I can see it." Emily hesitated, her finger tracing the rim of her glass nervously. "I don't know, Sarah. I guess I'm afraid if I speak, it'll only make things worse. I don't want to be the one to cause more pain. It hurts to suppress it." "You have a voice. Let it be heard," Sarah encouraged, conscious that her own demonstration of courage might help Emily discover hers. Watching her sister grapple with fear reminded Sarah of her own struggles with self-doubt, and she felt a surge of empathy. Taking a deep breath, Emily squared her shoulders. "You know, I wished every day after Dad left that I was someone else, someone brave enough to speak up. It felt easier to just blend into the background." Her words, though laced with trepidation, were a bold confrontation against years of silence. "Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about facing it," Mark chimed in, nodding toward Emily, who looked at him in surprise. The exchange shifted something in the air. Their collective tension transformed into solidarity. As Sarah took in her siblings' shifting dynamics, she felt the emerging strength amongst them. It was as though each member was shedding their own chains, the act of speaking serving as an articulation of their silent cries for connection. Positioning herself firmly within this web of shared vulnerability, Sarah ventured deeper still. "I've also been struggling with how we were always meant to be the perfect family. But that facade, it's thin. I don't want to pretend anymore. I want us to be real, to be raw. This family is made of real people with real scars." She expected resistance, yet instead, she met nods of silent understanding. The reassurance that they were together in this complex journey fortified her. "I've never felt perfect," Emily murmured, now on the cusp of her own realization. "And I think that's what's been keeping me from being present in my life. I don't want to hide anymore." Mark leaned forward, and for the first time, they were all leaning toward each other, bridging the gap that had felt insurmountable. "It's exhausting to be a shell of ourselves. If we're going to have a future together, then we all need to be fully here, no pretense, no masks." As they exchanged glances, Sarah sensed an undercurrent of resolve blooming. Each acknowledgement not only lightened the burden of their past, but signaled the possibility of a renewed connection. Yet beneath that flicker of hope, a pulse of anxiety thrummed. Would they truly be able to embrace the full complexity of their shared history? As if sensing her hesitation, Mark asked, "But if we lay everything bare, what do we risk losing?" His question hung heavily in the space, fraught with tension. Sarah realized they were at another crossroads, one that required more than just confessions. They would need to confront their fears head-on and forge a new path cloaked in honesty. It stirred a mixture of trepidation and anticipation within her. Would this powerful surge of vulnerability lead to deeper bonds, or would it expose fractures they could never mend? Every lingering eye bore witness to this moment, teetering on the edge of transformation. Clenching her fists in resolve, Sarah felt a wave of clarity wash over her. We risk losing nothing that is worth keeping if we open our hearts. It's time to decide what kind of family we want to be. As they leaned into the widening chasm of truth, Sarah's heart raced not just with fear, but with the exhilaration of possibility. The moment pressed upon them, a pivotal junction that could redefine who they would become. But amid the charge of their shared commitment, one question echoed loudly in her mind: how would they each respond when faced with the darkest corners of their histories? The shadows loomed ahead, demanding to be confronted. The air grew denser as silence engulfed them again, but it was a different kind of silence, a space filled with potential rather than dread. Sarah felt a flicker of hope, coupled with the weight of responsibility. With her heart thudding in her chest, she realized that the next words spoken would shape the course of their family's narrative. Would they embrace the discomfort that came with honesty, or retreat into the shadows of denial? "Let us think about Dad," Sarah began, her voice steadying. The name hung in the air. His absence was a wound they all carried. He chose to leave, and all of this, she gestured around the room. The silence, the fear, it started then. We need to address not just how it affected us, but how it has shaped who we became. Emily shifted uncomfortably, and Mark's brow furrowed with confusion. "You really think we should be talking about that?" he questioned, as if Sarah proposed to ignite a fire that might consume them all. "Yes, because he left, and each of us tucked that pain away differently. I felt abandoned. I thought maybe it was my fault. I never understood how to talk about it. I want us to explore how we all felt lost in that moment." There was a burst of clarity in Sarah's thoughts, like a bold stroke on a canvas. The pain was there, but so was the beauty of connection. It was time to let it out. "I always thought it was just me," Mark confessed. "I thought I was alone in feeling what? Unworthy? I never understood the weight of our history until now." Emily looked at Sarah, and something shifted again. "I'm not proud of it, but I buried myself in schoolwork, pretending that if I achieved enough, maybe I could rewrite our story. I'm terrified to admit that I'm not fine. I just thought if I kept it all together, maybe it wouldn't hurt so much." A collective vulnerability reverberated around the room. Sarah realized that each of them, in their various dysfunctional ways, had sought refuge in their roles, hiding from the emotional fallout. This wasn't just about their father. It was about arising from the ashes of their hidden truths. Would they work to support each other through their personal recovery, or was it all a fleeting moment of clarity quickly extinguished by the uncertainty of what lay ahead? "I can't keep pretending it doesn't hurt," she said, her intensity rising. "We've all created these masks, and if we really want to heal, we have to commit to stripping them away, day by day." The determination in her voice resonated, offering not only a challenge, but a plan for action. Mark nodded, pain and relief warring in his expression. "So, if we decide to open those doors, what comes next? How do we even start to rebuild?" His question was not just for Sarah, but for each of them. They were standing on a precipice. Sarah could sense the tension solidifying into a shared resolve. It begins with honesty, but it also means accountability. We need to be there for each other, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. We can't expect everything to change overnight. It will take time and patience. At the core of her own transformation was a growing conviction. She was no longer the innocent child wrestling with abandonment. She was an adult ready to redefine what family meant, not only through the bonds of blood, but also through commitment to collective healing. As they engaged in this deeper conversation, Sarah envisioned a new possibility, a future where they mirrored vulnerability in their interactions and supported each other through the emotional reckoning, not shying away when things grew tough. But still, anxiety curled in her thoughts. Would they actually commit to this journey? Or was it easier to retreat to old defenses once the emotional tide turned turbulent? Feeling the swell of anticipation, Sarah recognized their next pivotal moment. What if we set a day aside to really talk? To lay everything out in the open? We could start with one specific memory about Dad. It'll help us face the past together. Mark looked pensive, while Emily clenched her jaw, grappling with the impending discomfort. What if it becomes too much? She whispered, as if acknowledging the fragile thread of courage that bound the three of them. If we choose to leave it all unsaid, Sarah responded, a steely resolve in her gaze, then we lose the chance to grow. We risk remaining stuck in the past rather than moving forward as a family. In that moment, the reality set in. Each of them would have to confront their scars, relinquishing the safety nets they had woven throughout the years. But the question lingered, threatening to unravel them all. Were they ready to face not only their own legacies of pain, but also the potential fallout from daring to deepen their connection? An unshakable tension lay ahead, and Sarah understood, in all its raw complexity, that enduring this next chapter meant traversing unmarked territories together, where unintended consequences lurked just beyond their reach. The path was fraught with challenges waiting to test their resolve, and uncertainty loomed large. Where would it lead them? The day they had set aside for their conversation loomed closer, like an approaching storm. Sarah felt a mix of trepidation and anticipation. Each interaction leading up to it was laced with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. As she prepared, she found herself running the same thoughts on a loop, questioning her readiness to dive into the uncharted waters of their shared pain. When the day finally arrived, the air in the living room felt charged with expectancy. Emily was first to arrive, her expression a carefully crafted mask of resolve. Sarah noticed the slight tremor in her hands as she fidgeted with her phone, her eyes darting around the room like a kite caught in the wind. "Hey," Sarah greeted, forcing a smile. "Are you ready for this?" "I guess so," Emily replied, her voice wavering. "I just can't shake the feeling that it might spiral out of control. What if we open a door that can't be closed?" Sarah understood her fear. She felt it too. The prospect of revisiting their father's absence felt like reopening a fresh wound, one that had been skillfully bandaged with silence and avoidance over the years. "Opening that door is the only way we can let the light in," Sarah countered, her determination hardening. "We can't keep pretending everything is fine when inside we're still hurting." They exchanged a look that spoke volumes, before a knock broke the tense moment. Mark stepped inside, his brow furrowed, as if already bracing for the weight of their impending conversation. "Hey," he said, glancing between them. "You ready?" Sarah nodded slowly, her stomach a tight knot of nerves. "Let us get started." They settled into the familiar seating arrangement, an unspoken comfort taking shape amidst the gravity of their task. Finding the courage to speak first had become a silent contest of wills. As the minutes passed, the silence left a visible stain on the air. Thick and uncomfortable, it was Emily who finally broke the stillness. "Okay, let us just start with a memory. Something about Dad." Her vulnerability was shocking, but necessary. "How about the time Mark hesitated, then pushed through, the time he didn't show up at my game? I thought if I played well enough, maybe he'd be proud and start coming again." There was a tightness in his voice as he spoke, the crack in his facade becoming more apparent. "I felt the same way," Sarah admitted, surprising herself with the admission. "Every recital, every play, always searching the audience, hoping. But he was just never there." Emily's eyes glistened. "I was always too busy with grades, thinking if I just excelled enough, maybe it would make it easier to forget everything. And yet, I just wanted a dad who'd cheer for me, not a report card." Each confession seemed to crack open a dam, allowing the emotions to flow forth. After years of bottled-up feelings, finally hearing their stories felt both cathartic and terrifying. With each moment, Sarah discovered more about her siblings than she had ever anticipated, the unimaginable burden of guilt they had all carried, how fiercely they had each fought to drown out the noise of their family's failures. What if we shared our biggest regrets about Dad? Mark's suggestion held both gravity and a glint of hope. "It might help us understand our feelings better, you know?" Sarah's heart raced at the thought. They would need to confront not just their past but the ways that pain had molded them into who they were today. "I regret not asking him to stay," she confessed. "I always felt it was pointless." Mark nodded solemnly, and Emily added, "I regret thinking that I could change things all on my own. I never reached out for help." The conversation began to shed light on their decades of isolation, revealing stark truths about their individual coping mechanisms. Yet Sarah also realized that this newfound honesty was just the beginning of their journey, a catalyst capable of either tearing them apart or knitting them closer together. But then, just as catharsis loomed on the horizon, Sarah's mind flickered back to the unspoken truths lingering beneath their confessions. What if the very foundations of their relationship, those fragile threads still stitched together by pain, were now dangerously exposed as they wrestled with their memories? As they continued to delve deeper, Sarah caught the uncertainty flickering in Mark's eyes. Would this exploration lead them to genuine healing, or unleash a torrent of blame? The stakes felt higher than ever, the weight of their shared history palpable, even suffocating. In facing these memories, are we risking losing what little connection we already have? She quietly wondered, the tension boiling in her stomach. Mark's expression hardened. Whatever happens next, we have to commit to finding out together. But as they moved into heavier territory and the true implications of their revelations sank in, Sarah braced herself for the inevitable. Could they withstand the storm of emotions threatening to erupt, or would they shatter under its weight? The moment felt crucial. The path to healing lay just ahead, but could they navigate its treacherous currents without losing themselves in the process? Would bonding through broken pieces bring them closer, or would exposing the jagged shards of their past lead only to further fractures? Her resolve solidified, but uncertainty gripped her heart. As they leaned into their painful history, one terrifying question loomed. Were they prepared for the consequences of truly knowing each other? In the aftermath of revelations, a palpable shift emerged among the siblings. The air that once throbbed with tension now buzzed with a fragile hope, woven through their conversations of heartbreak and regret. Having unveiled the raw edges of their past, they stood at the crossroads of reinvention together. Mark's voice broke the silence that enveloped them. If we're going to rebuild, we need a plan. Setting aside these moments isn't enough. Together we must learn how to communicate moving forward. His eyes gleamed with newfound determination, as if he had just grasped the essence of family anew. Sarah felt a weight lift. She realized that a commitment to transparency and vulnerability could fuse them together. Emily nodded, relief flooding her features. I've wanted to say things for so long but feared what would come next. Can we promise to share when we're feeling overwhelmed? I don't want us to slip back into silence. That idea struck a chord in Sarah. Vulnerability had ignited something powerful. They would need more than discussions of the past. It would take steadfast accountability to nurture their transformed relationships. We can set regular family meetings, she suggested, the notion blooming with potential. A safe space to express what we're feeling without judgment. And if any of us starts to retreat, we'll remind each other to be brave. Mark's brows lifted, impressed by the spirit of collaboration. What if we also share our achievements, no matter how small? It could help us see each other in a better light. Yes, Emily chimed in, her excitement infectious. We need to celebrate the good we're doing, rebuild trust brick by brick. Each new layer of commitment made Sarah's heart swell. Perhaps they could not only recover from the void left by their father, but forge deeper ties than ever before. The joys of their early discussions gradually expanded into a shared vision for their family. Sustainability felt attainable. Just as they rebuilt the rubble of their past, they could come to expect more from each other moving forward. They would nurture their connections with the same compassion they yearned for as children. As they shared their moments of growth amid this burgeoning commitment, an unfamiliar lightness spread through Sarah. They were no longer just bound by unreliable history. They were dedicated to transforming their narrative, driven by the resilience they had unearthed from their pain. Each small victory reinforced their relationships. On a day that once felt like a downhill spiral, they began to map out a collective future rooted in authenticity. The sessions soon transformed not just into family meetings, but a supportive circle of friends amidst the storm, celebrating progress like stepping stones. Each acknowledgement softened old hurt, and as milestones were shared, they felt interconnected through ups and downs alike. But Sarah's greatest triumph came from within. As she organized and facilitated their gatherings, her voice absorbed the power of authority, acknowledging that she both needed family support and offered it in return. Her efforts blossomed into dedication, redefining her role within the family, no longer just a dutiful daughter grappling with past pain, but an empowered beacon of change. In the months that followed their heartfelt breakthroughs, the family exchanged heartfelt messages of encouragement and empathy throughout moments of struggle. It was a delicate art, learning to be present in each other's lives while not drowning in the complexities of their histories. One evening, Sarah sat beside Jake, reflecting on the journey they had traversed together. "I never thought we could move past our family's history," she admitted, watching her siblings banter in the living room. The warmth of their connection radiated through the home, nourishing her spirit. Jake beamed, his pride evident. "You led the way, Sarah. This journey was yours. Your courage initiated healing where it was most needed." His words filled her with a powerful sense of accomplishment. Just months ago, she was standing on the edge of her own identity, in conflict between family and love. Now, she had confidently woven both into an unbreakable fabric that respected her past while holding sacred her dreams. Having transcended the chains of her upbringing, Sarah had transformed not only her family dynamics, but her own self-perception as well. In navigating the uncharted territories of honesty, she had laid the foundation for relationships built on mutual respect, love, and accountability. With renewed confidence, she embraced her future with Jake, secure in knowing that she had conquered her past and carved a refreshing path forward. As she watched her family bond and grow together, a deep satisfaction settled in her heart, a testament to their collective strength and her personal triumph. Sarah had proven that confronting pain could lead to resilience and clarity. She was no longer just fulfilling expectations. She was rewriting her legacy, guiding her family gently but firmly toward healing and acceptance. Reflecting this journey, she understood the remarkable truth. The past could enrich the present, if only they dared to wield the power of conversation. This was just the beginning, but she knew in her bones together they would thrive. Now is your moment, dear audience. You need to subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that resonate within your core. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support transformative narratives that uplift the spirit. Your engagement is vital. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this heartfelt resolution. Your support matters more than ever in uplifting these stories of personal overcoming.